What if a forgotten fighter jet in a dusty hangar held the truth to a mission the military swore never happened? Colonel Clara Temple spent decades in silence, until one viral video, a long-lost package, and a convoy of old ghosts forced history to remember. This isn't just a story of honor delayed. It's the powerful, true tale of a woman who rebuilt her legacy bolt by bolt and gave silence wings. Welcome to my channel. They say scrap metal doesn't hum, doesn't whisper. But I know different. That old fighter jet in Hangar 4? It talks to me. And I listen. Name's Clara Temple. I'm 67 years old, a retired Air Force colonel with too many ghosts and not enough visitors. My home. A converted maintenance office at the edge of what used to be Madison Airfield, a dusty strip just outside Greystone, Arizona. Most folks think the place is abandoned. They're not wrong. But for the last 6 years, I've been its only faithful tenant. Every morning starts the same. Black coffee by 0500. Then 8 solid hours restoring a rust-bitten F-100 Super Sabre, same model I flew during an op no one ever talks about. The Air Force says it never happened. But I've got scars that beg to differ. That Super Sabre had been left to rot behind the hangar when I found her. Wings like a fallen eagle. Every bolt I clean, every panel I realign. It's like reassembling a memory. A truth they tried to erase. And if you know anything about military history, you know this. When something gets buried, there's usually a reason. It was around 0930 when the peace broke. The hangar doors screeched open. I didn't look up, just kept working the aileron bracket with my torque wrench. But I heard them. 2 young voices echoing through the corrugated metal like they owned the air. Property survey says this whole parcel's up for rezoning, one of them said. Probably in his late 20s. Crisp white shirt and zero understanding of jet fuel. Mixed-use complex, maybe a brewery, apartments. This'll be prime once we get rid of all this junk. I tightened the bolt. The other one laughed. That thing a real jet? Belongs in a museum, not in this retirement scrapyard. I finally glanced up. 2 of them, all right. Tablets in hand. Shiny shoes picking up red dust with every step. One spotted me. Grease-covered coveralls, gray braid tied back. Hydraulic fluid smeared across my knuckles. His smile flickered. Ma'am? Are you authorized to be here? I leaned against the ladder. Been authorized since before you were born. They didn't know what to say to that. This place was condemned years ago, one said after a beat, trying for official. We're part of a real estate development group. You'll need to vacate. I just stared. There's a stillness you learn in the cockpit, especially when you're being locked onto. I brought that stillness into every conversation. The second guy muttered under his breath. She's just hoarding scrap metal. He thought I couldn't hear him. Wrong. Still didn't say anything. Just climbed the ladder into the cockpit. The Super Sabre welcomed me like always. Cool metal, the faint scent of old leather, and under the dashboard, right where I'd stashed it 6 years ago, a small, worn insignia. My colonel's pin. The one they made me hand over after the war. Below it, etched in worn brass, Operation Dust Glide. A mission they erased from every record I could ever find. The one that saved 19 lives and cost me my career. I stayed there a moment, fingers brushing the metal. Then something outside shifted. Movement, not footsteps. I peered over the canopy edge. Standing in the shadows near the hangar entrance was a man. Tall, late 50s, maybe older. Civilian clothes, but the way he stood? Combat trained, no doubt. Eyes scanning exit points, hands loose but ready. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the jet, staring like it had whispered something to him. And then, as if sensing I'd noticed, he turned and walked away. No words. No nod. Just gone. Left me wondering. Who the hell was he? And what did he know about this jet that no one else remembered? Next morning, I found a red slip taped to my hangar door. Eviction notice in bold at the top. Beneath it, some intern with a Sharpie had scrawled, "Time's up, Grandma." I folded the paper in half, exactly along the creases. I didn't rage, didn't curse. I've been through worse. I survived bureaucratic crossfire, chain of command assassinations, and a war zone radar blackout with nothing but a dog-eared map and an overheating engine. But I'll be honest, the ache that settled in my chest wasn't from the insult. It was for the Super Sabre. That aircraft was 80% complete. 5 years of grinding, welding, hunting down long-discontinued parts on shady forums and remote air bases. This bird wasn't just some rust bucket. She was my last link to the thing no one ever believed I'd done. I unlocked the side door and stepped inside. Something felt off. Lighter somehow. Air too still. That's when I spotted the blinking light on my phone, tucked next to a decades-old flight manual. One message. I played it. It was a video, posted online sometime last night. Footage of me, in the hangar, grease-stained, hunched over the jet, moving slow. Caption read, Air Force cosplay grandma and her backyard war toy. The camera had caught me from the side. My worst angle. You could see the scars across my jaw, courtesy of a cockpit fire in '91. You could see the awkward way I leaned on my left leg. I took a hit back then. Shrapnel did a number on the knee. The VA gave me a cane and a goodbye. The comment section? Predictable. Someone check if she escaped a nursing home faced with tears of joy. Stolen valor alert police car light. Women didn't even fly combat missions back then. Fake old bat. I closed the app. Sat in silence for a while. No anger. Just that old familiar numbness. The kind you get after a mission's gone sideways, and there's no one left to call. That's when the truck pulled up. An old Ford F-150, the kind built before cup holders became more important than torque. I tensed, expecting another developer or some city rep with a badge too shiny for their own good. But out stepped a man. Denim jacket, ball cap, gray at the temples, boots worn down from hard use. He stopped a few yards away, didn't try to shake my hand or cross any lines. Colonel Temple, he said, respectful-like. I didn't look up. Haven't used that title in years. He nodded. Master Sergeant Ray Dalton. Force Recon. Retired. That name hit something in me. Force Recon. Not just Marines. Elite Marines. The kind of guys you only meet once, in places where satellites can't find you and maps just say, here be dragons. I was there, he added softly, during Dusk Glide. My unit was pinned down 6 clicks south of Al-Wazir Crossing. You dropped in under live fire when everyone else was told to pull out. I finally looked him over. He looked heavier now, not in the physical sense, though age had settled on him, but in his eyes, like he was carrying the weight of someone else's debt. He stepped forward and held out a brown paper-wrapped package, thin and sealed tight. His hands trembled just slightly as he offered it. This was supposed to go to you. Got lost in the shuffle, some military estate auction 15 years ago. Took me a while to track you down. That video going around, my grandson showed it to me. I saw the jet. Then I saw you. Knew right away. I took the package with both hands. It was lighter than I expected. Like it wasn't real. What is it? I asked. Dalton nodded toward the jet. It's yours. Should have been given to you 3 decades ago. He snapped a salute. No fanfare. No words. Just one sharp motion that carried more meaning than 100 parades. Then he turned, climbed back into his truck, and drove off. Dust hung in the air long after his taillights disappeared. Back inside the hangar, I sat down on the edge of the wing and unwrapped the paper. Inside was a sealed manila envelope. Pentagon official stamped in red. Across the front, faint typewritten letters. Colonel Clara Temple, Operation Dusk Glide. Medal of Valor, pending approval. Top secret clearance level, Obsidian. I didn't open it. Not yet. It had waited 30 years. One more day wouldn't hurt. The morning air tasted like dust and diesel. You could smell change in it, that metallic kind of shift that always comes before either a storm or a fight. I unlocked the hangar a little before 6. The sun hadn't quite cleared the ridgeline, but already the eviction notice was curling from the heat. I peeled it off the door, folded it neatly, and stuck it in my back pocket. Then I walked straight to the Super Saber. Today's task? The one I'd been putting off for weeks. Disassembly. Removing the starboard wing was the first step. You don't just unscrew a part of history like you're working on lawn furniture. Every bolt I loosened felt like betrayal. Like I was unbuilding the very proof of what I did. What they made me pretend never happened. I was halfway through separating the hydraulic line when I heard footsteps. Not boots. Dress shoes. Slick, hollow thuds against concrete. Then a voice. Colonel Temple, your grace period ended yesterday. I didn't turn around. I recognized the tone. Real estate. He had backup, too. 2 security guards flanking him like nervous bookends. This is an official eviction, the man continued, voice rising. That aircraft is unregistered property occupying commercial real estate. It'll be dismantled and sold for scrap. That word, scrap, hit me harder than I expected. Not because of what it meant for the plane, but for what it meant for me. That's all I was now, wasn't I? Scrap. I stood slowly, wiping my hands on a rag. I need more time. He smirked. Time's a commodity, Colonel. And yours ran out 30 years ago. I wanted to deck him. Not because he insulted me, but because he had no idea what he was standing next to. That jet wasn't just a restoration project. It was a lifeline. A living testament to the night I defied orders and saved 19 soldiers. But I didn't throw a punch. I didn't raise my voice. Because suddenly, I heard something else. Engines. Not cars. Military. I stepped out of the hangar, the security guards shifting uncertainly beside me. 5 olive-drab military jeeps were barreling toward us across the gravel, kicking up clouds of red dust. They stopped with synchronized precision, like a drill formation with horsepower. Doors opened in unison. From the lead vehicle stepped a lieutenant colonel. Mid-40s, clean-cut, metal shining under the Arizona sun. His posture was military textbook. His eyes, though, they were scanning me like I was the objective. He stopped 6 feet away and executed a salute sharp enough to cut glass. "Colonel Clara Temple," he asked, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel James Rourke, Special Activities Division. We need to speak, urgently." The real estate man stepped forward, confused and indignant. "Excuse me, this is private property." Rourke turned to him with the coldest expression I've seen outside of wartime. "Sir, I suggest you step back. This is now a matter of national security." And just like that, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. The crowd, because yes, there was a crowd now, fell quiet. Phones hovered in the air, recording like vultures over a battlefield. The same people who laughed at me yesterday were watching, unsure whether they were witnessing a scandal or a legend. Rourke reached into a case and handed me a folder sealed with classified markings. "We believe you received a package yesterday from a Master Sergeant Ray Dalton?" I nodded slowly. "Have you opened it?" "No." He exhaled, relieved. "Then I'm here to give you the context you deserve." He opened the folder. Inside was a presidential order stamped with today's date. "Operation Dust Glide has been declassified as of 0600 hours this morning. Your security clearance is being reinstated to facilitate public acknowledgement of your role." The world shifted under my boots. He handed me a second document, the very one from Dalton's envelope, now officially sanctioned. It wasn't just a Medal of Valor citation. It was a letter, handwritten, from my commanding general, dated 1991, recommending me for the highest honor, only to have it buried by brass too nervous to admit a woman had gone rogue and saved a mission no one believed she belonged in. "The last surviving member of the Oversight Committee passed away 3 weeks ago," Rourke said quietly. His final testimony included a full account of the cover-up. "We've spent the last year cross-verifying. You're finally getting the recognition you were denied." I looked down at the Super Sabre. She wasn't junk. She was evidence. And now, she'd be seen for what she was, proof. The next 10 minutes were a blur of boots, voices, and roped-off perimeter lines. They turned my rust-covered hangar into a makeshift secure zone. News vans started rolling in by the dozen, guided by tweets, whispers, and live streams that spun faster than jet turbines. Funny how fast the internet changes its mind. Yesterday, I was cosplay grandma. Today, I was a headline. But I didn't care about any of that. What got me, what damn near brought me to my knees, was what came next. From the lead jeep, Rourke signaled toward the perimeter. "Ma'am," he said, and then stepped aside. They came forward, one by one, men in their 50s and 60s, some with canes, some with medals of their own, all with shoulders that still carried the weight of that night in 1991. 17 of them. The same number I had counted from the air that night during Operation Dust Glide. Trapped behind enemy lines, bleeding, out of options. And somehow, I got them home. Until today, they'd been nothing more than shadows in my memory. Now they were walking toward me. Real. Alive. Older. But still carrying themselves with the silent discipline of elite operators. One stepped forward, Wesley Shaw, former team lead, Force Recon. I remembered him by the way he limped. I remembered carrying him out of that burning valley with enemy fire lighting up the hills behind us. He stopped in front of me, then turned to the others. Without a word, they formed a line, and then presented arms. 17 hands raised in perfect salute. For me. Not a rank. Not a medal. For me. I tried to speak. tried to find the words. But there was too much silence. The good kind. The heavy kind that meant something sacred was happening, and if you spoke, you'd ruin it. Finally, Shaw spoke. Colonel Temple, you don't know us. At least, not anymore. But we've known you every single day for 30 years. I swallowed hard, my voice a whisper. I didn't think I'd ever see any of you again. He nodded. We couldn't speak. We weren't allowed. Debriefed. Sealed. But we watched. We followed. You built this plane when no one was watching. You kept our story alive when no one else could. And now, he turned and gestured behind him. One of the men brought forward something wrapped in a military flag. I knew what it was before they even unfolded it. A piece of the original Super Sabre. The one I flew that night. Thought it had been dismantled, gone forever. But there it was, the nose cone. Burned, scarred, but unmistakable. We tracked down parts, Shaw said. What they didn't shred, we recovered. We're donating them to the Air Force Academy Museum. I stepped closer, traced my fingers along the pitted metal. There, barely visible beneath the char, was the unit insignia. A Black Hawk in flight, with a crescent moon beneath it. Only 5 of those were ever painted on combat aircraft. Mine was the 6th. Behind us, the crowd had grown. Civilians, cadets, veterans, media. But no one spoke. They just stood and watched. Because this wasn't for them. This was ours. Then Rourke turned to address the cameras for the first time. Operation Dust Glide, he began, was buried due to bureaucratic oversight, political risk, and a culture that refused to accept that one woman, acting alone, could achieve what even an entire division had deemed impossible. He gestured toward the Super Sabre behind me. This aircraft represents more than a mission. It represents suppressed truth, erased history, and the resilience of one woman who refused to let silence win. Then came the final moment, the one that broke every damn barrier I'd ever built around myself. Shaw looked me square in the eye. Most of us have families now. Kids. Grandkids. You didn't just save 17 soldiers, ma'am. You saved every life that came after. And that makes you more than a hero. That makes you our legacy. That's when it hit me. They hadn't come just to say thank you. They'd come to give me back to myself. 6 weeks. That's how long it took to transform Hangar 4 from condemned real estate to hallowed ground. The Air Force moved fast once the story broke. They always do when legacy's on the line. The Super Sabre, my bird, never left Greystone. Instead, she stayed right where she belonged. Only now behind UV-filtered glass, under museum-grade lighting, surrounded by a flood of visitors who saw more than just aluminum and rivets. They saw the fingerprints of truth, clawing its way back from silence. They called the exhibit Dust Glide, Flight Through the Shadows. It wasn't just about me. That was the condition I laid down. There were photos, some grainy, some official, of every one of the 17 men I flew cover for. Their families had sent them in, eager, proud, like they'd been waiting 30 years to show the world who had lived because of what I'd done, because of what the government once refused to admit I did. In the center of the exhibit stood a simple black plaque, the kind you could walk past if you weren't paying attention. This aircraft was flown by Colonel Clara Temple, United States Air Force. On January 23, 1991, she disobeyed orders to complete a rescue mission that officially did not exist. In doing so, she saved 17 lives. This aircraft is not just a machine. It is evidence of truth, of silence, of sacrifice. I stood there at the unveiling, flanked by General Roland Carr, current commandant of the Air Force Academy. Sharp man. Good handshake. Voice like gravel soaked in bourbon. He handed me a black and gold service pin, a newly minted badge of honor, issued only to those whose valor had once been silenced. Colonel Temple, he said into the microphone, you're being appointed as honorary faculty advisor to the Air Force History Division. Your first-hand experience with covert operations, ethics, and service under suppression will be instrumental in how we train the next generation. I didn't smile. I wasn't ungrateful. But that part of me, the public-facing part, she's been dormant a long time. Instead, I stepped to the podium and cleared my throat. This aircraft, I said, gesturing to the Super Sabre, isn't the original one I flew. That one was gutted and tossed in pieces across supply chains when the brass tried to cover up Dust Glide. This is her sister. Same make, same bones, same soul. I paused. looked out across the sea of uniforms, civilians, kids on field trips, press trying not to blink. But here's the truth. This wasn't about proving a mission happened. It was about proving I did. Because some of us served in silence. Not by choice, but by design. We were erased. And erasing someone's past doesn't just rob their history. It steals their future. Silence again. But it wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with understanding. After the speech, an ROTC cadet approached me. Maybe 22. Buzz cut. Eager. A little awkward. "Ma'am," he said, standing a little too straight. "Is it true they tried to call you delusional before the story came out?" I nodded. "Online?" "Yeah. Couple of developers. Some trolls." He looked down, embarrassed. "And now you're here. On a plaque. With a Medal of Valor." "Now," I said, "I'm finally standing in my own history." Then I handed him something I'd carried in my flight bag for 30 years. My old mission logbook, pages brittle and sun-faded, but still legible. "Pass it forward," I told him. Because some stories don't get written until someone's brave enough to read them aloud. He took it like it was made of crystal. 2 weeks after the exhibit opened, I returned to the Academy campus for something that meant even more to me than the declassification, the medal, or the headlines. A ceremony without cameras. No press. No generals. Just cadets, mostly young women, and a few instructors standing at attention beneath the frame tail fin of the Super Saber I once loved like a comrade. They'd asked me to speak to this year's graduating class. I told them no podium, no speech. I wanted something that felt earned, not orchestrated. So we stood in the restoration hangar behind the museum, the kind of place that smelled of oil and quiet effort. I held something wrapped in canvas. Heavy, familiar. My helmet. I began, voice soft but steady. The one I wore during Operation Dusklight. Custom-lined. Radio-modded. There's still a crease in the foam from where a piece of shrapnel kissed my temple. I set it down on a table in front of me. Gray, scuffed, a faint number 227 barely visible under the old paint. For 30 years, this sat in a footlocker. No display. No honors. Just silence. I looked at the cadets, a few dozen of them, standing at parade rest. Eyes wide. Some with tears they were trying not to blink loose. But I didn't preserve it for me. I continued. I preserved it for you. Then I turned to a sharp-eyed Lieutenant Rena Park, the top female graduate of the year. She'd already been tapped for flight command. Smart. Steady. Carried herself like the kind of leader people follow without being told. "Lieutenant Park," I said, "you've been selected as the first recipient of a new Academy tradition." I lifted the helmet and handed it to her like it was a torch in the dark. Each year, the top graduating female cadet will be entrusted with this helmet. You'll hold it for 1 year. Then pass it to the next. You won't wear it. You won't polish it. You'll just remember what it stands for. She accepted it with both hands, her breath catching. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I replied. "Just fly like you were never supposed to ask permission." The instructors clapped. Quiet. Respectful. Like something sacred had just changed hands. Afterward, Park approached me alone. "How did you do it?" she asked. "How did you survive being erased?" I looked her in the eyes, saw in them a version of my younger self I barely remembered. "I didn't survive by waiting for recognition," I told her. "I survived by knowing I did the right thing. That's the only fuel that burns clean during the quiet years." She nodded, understanding more than words could say. And I realized then that legacy isn't about bronze plaques or glossy displays. It's about transference. About making sure what you carried through fire ends up in stronger hands. I left the hangar that night feeling something I hadn't in years. Weightless. I didn't expect to become a hashtag. Wasn't trying to make a point. Wasn't angling for a comeback tour. But a month after the helmet changed hands, a young military historian named Mackenzie Chun reached out. Early 30s, sharp mind, sharper ethics. She wasn't chasing clickbait. She was chasing ghosts. She showed up at my office in the Academy's history department, clutching a notebook and a tablet full of scanned, declassified files. "Ma'am," she began, formal but eager, "I'm working on a piece about institutional memory and the cost of classified operations. But I don't want to tell your story. I want to understand it." That earned her a chair. We talked for 6 hours straight. About Duskglide, yes, but also about the culture of silence. The airmen and women who were scrubbed out of reports because they didn't fit a neat box. The quiet missions that left loud scars. 2 weeks later, her first video dropped. The Forgotten Colonel, how Clara Temple rewrote Air Force history. It started with the old, grainy footage from the viral video. Me in coveralls, back hunched over the Super Saber. Then it cut to classified footage, interviews with the Dust Glide survivors, and even side-by-side documents showing how my name had been redacted or omitted across multiple reports. She didn't use music, just silence and truth. In 3 days, it had over 3 million views. But it wasn't the views that mattered. It was the comments. My grandfather served in Korea. We just found out he was decorated, but never told us. My aunt flew recon in the Gulf. Never even mentioned it before she passed. As a female pilot, I needed to hear this. Still fighting for recognition in 2025. Mackenzie followed up with a second video. A deeper dive. This time, she asked if I'd sit for a formal interview. We filmed it at the museum, with the Super Saber behind me like a silent witness. The camera caught the light off the Medal of Valor, but I noticed Mackenzie kept zooming in on my hands, grease-stained, scarred, resting gently on the aircraft like it was alive. "Do you feel bitter about the silence?" she asked. I thought for a long while before answering. "Bitterness," I said, "is a luxury I never allowed myself. If I'd focused on what was denied instead of what I actually did, I'd have lost twice." She nodded. "Do you think the record's finally been corrected?" "No," I said. "I think the record's finally been opened. There's a difference." She understood that better than most. After Mackenzie's videos blew up, the emails started coming. Not to her. To me. Veterans. Spouses. Children. Grandchildren. People writing from all over the country with trembling fingers and buried memories. "We found a photo of my dad with a patch we've never seen. Turns out he flew in Laos when no one admitted we had planes there. My sister worked on a covert drone program in '03. She died in silence. We didn't even know until your story came out. My uncle used to mutter about Dust Glide. We thought it was a fever dream. He cried when he saw your name." Some messages were short. Just thank you. Others came with documents, faded photos, old letters from commands that didn't exist on maps. It was like the world had been waiting for one thread to pull, and when Mackenzie pulled it, a whole web came tumbling loose. The Academy launched a formal archive project, Operation Open Record, led by Mackenzie, co-chaired by me. Our mission? Document stories like mine. Verify them. Preserve them. Give them air after decades underground. Some of them were messy. Not everyone wanted to be remembered. Some still lived under NDAs so tight it made my stomach twist. But others? They were ready. And that's when I realized my story didn't end with the declassification. It started something. Dust Glide wasn't a one-off. It was a spark. Every week, cadets visited the Super Saber. Some left small notes folded under the wing, like offerings at a shrine. For my aunt, who taught me how to fly. To the mission that saved my dad. We see you now. And every spring, Lieutenant Park passed the helmet to the next top female graduate. I made it a point to attend the handoff. Didn't speak. Didn't pose. Just watched. Let the silence speak for itself. One year, a cadet named Lena Cordero accepted the helmet. After the ceremony, she found me outside the hangar, beneath the same Arizona sky I'd flown under decades ago. "Ma'am," she said, "I hope one day they name a plane after you." I chuckled. "That's nice of you, Lieutenant. But I already had one." She raised an eyebrow. I pointed back to the exhibit. "She's parked right there, and she's louder than any nameplate." Time does strange things on a military base. Some places age fast. Every bolt rusts. Every stripe fades. Others, like the classroom where I started teaching, feel timeless. Maybe it was the light. Or maybe it was the cadets, fresh-faced and wide-eyed, making everything feel new again. I wasn't a professor. Never wanted to be one. But after Dust Glide was declassified and the Saber was mounted in the museum, they asked if I'd help teach ethics, specifically, the ethics of classified operations. I said yes, on one condition. We wouldn't talk theory. We'd talk reality. We'd talk about the weight of silence. The way some medals arrive in the mail, 30 years too late. The cost of making decisions in the dark, with no backup and no guarantee of recognition. I designed a course called Operational Shadows, Truth in Classified History. And I opened the first session with one sentence, scrawled on the whiteboard in black ink. Don't judge someone for their silence. Sometimes they're the reason you can still speak. Each week, I shared another story. Sometimes my own. Sometimes a fellow ghost's. Names redacted where necessary. The cadets listened, took notes, and when I handed back essays, I didn't just mark grades. I wrote questions. Would you disobey a direct order if it meant saving lives? What's worth burying a career over? If no one ever knew what you did, would you still do it? Those questions lit fires, the kind that burn long after the lecture ends. I kept a photo in my office, black and white, curled at the edges. The 17 men from Duskglide, taken 6 months after the operation at an unofficial reunion. No uniforms, just smiles. They were my compass. One quiet afternoon, Mackenzie joined me for tea in the corner of my office. She'd just signed her first book deal, Flight Denied, Women, War, and the Archive of Silence. I was proud of her like you're proud of a niece who chose the harder road and made it through. As we looked out the window toward the Sabre, now shimmering under its protective dome, she asked, "Do you ever regret not speaking out sooner?" I didn't answer right away. Just watched 2 cadets studying the wing configuration like engineers at a sacred site. Then I said, no, because I wasn't forgotten by the people who mattered, and because the right voice came along when the world was ready to listen. She smiled. You're talking about me? I chuckled. No, I'm talking about the aircraft. I just kept it alive long enough for someone to hear what it had to say. Later that week, I sat alone on the wing of the Sabre after hours, the museum lights dimmed, the silence full of memory. I pulled out a small leather-bound journal, flipped to a page I hadn't read in years. Mission record, January 23, 1991. Call sign, Nightboard 6. Objective, cover Duskglide team until evac. Result, all personnel accounted for. Aircraft status, 1 engine, 1 soul. I closed the book and set it on the dash inside the cockpit. Let it rest where it belonged. 2 years after the Super Sabre found its home under museum glass, I stopped being called Colonel Temple every day. Most people at the academy just call me Clara, even the cadets. Funny how time smooths out the sharp edges of rank. But legacy? That sticks. Every spring, I still watch the helmet pass from one cadet to another. I'd sit near the back of the ceremony, under the wing of the very plane that carried my name and story forward. The cadets never rushed the moment. They handled that helmet like it could crack open the sky. A couple months back, Mackenzie released a final video, the capstone to her Duskglide series. It was simply titled, The Wing Holds. It opened on aerial shots of the Sabre's polished skin, sunlight gleaming off its nose like it was still ready to fly. Then came footage of me. Older now, hair silver, glasses thick, voice a little raspier, sitting on the museum steps with a mug of black coffee. I wasn't wearing medals. I was wearing a sweatshirt from the academy, sleeves rolled up, grease still under my nails from helping restore a Vietnam-era scout drone for a new exhibit. Mackenzie asked one final question. What do you want people to remember? I looked past the camera, toward the aircraft, toward the photo wall inside the museum. 17 men and their families, smiles stretched across generations. And I said, I don't need a statue. I don't need another medal. What I need is for every kid who walks through those museum doors to understand that some people serve in silence, not because they want to be forgotten, but because the mission mattered more than the memory. And now, I want those silences filled with truth, with honor, and with stories that don't take 30 years to tell. The video closed on the cockpit of the Sabre. Tucked under the throttle was my mission log, sealed in glass. Visitors pressed their palms to the case like they were reaching for history. I got letters after that. Hundreds. From daughters of codebreakers, sons of ground operators, grandkids of medics who patched wounds on missions no one would talk about. But one stuck with me. From a 13-year-old in Wisconsin. Dear Colonel Temple, I didn't know girls could fly fighter jets. My teacher showed us your story. Now I want to fly one too. Maybe I'll get to wear your helmet someday. Love, Emma. I read it 3 times before placing it in the drawer beside my medals. That's where I keep the real ones now. That night, I returned to the hangar, alone. I climbed into the Sabre one last time, slid into the pilot's seat, hands on the stick. The engines would never roar again. But in my mind, she still flew. And I still carried 17 ghosts, plus the thousands more who now had names, stories, and voices, etched in the vapor trail we left behind. That's the thing about silence. It's heavy until you give it wings. Then it soars.